video for a first time freshman. I'm gonna leave this to, so people can kind of see it publicly. But this is for the adult students that are going to college. No matter what age you're going, because some people go in like the 18 or so like that, and some people could go in their 20s and like late 20s and early 30s. I wrote down and compiled as best as I can on every piece of information I thought about that might better help you. And I wrote a few first time, the top 21 tips I can provide for first time college freshmen that freshmen should know, and it can also go beyond that point. If you're a sophomore, you're a junior, you're a senior, some of this can still apply. So just kind of listen to what I'm saying, because it's gonna be some fun. My first point was I wrote down: go to your student/department orientation. The reason why you should always go to your orientation, because number one, especially this is something I experienced when I was in Nichols, and I think Fletcher too. They tell you how the university is running, like how is it ran, how's it the functionality of it. If you're going to the more specific one, like the music one, they tell you, okay, what you're going to expect. They tell you stuff like some very useful information. You get to meet prospective classmates, prospective professors, and that was my first experience in Talbot Hall. The orientation. And I'm glad I didn't regret going to that. Pretty much. So I can kind of understand how they function, how things go, because you don't want to start off on the wrong foot. Let's note that now. Number 2, make your schedule spreadsheet ahead of time. And I had to do this for every semester I was in NSU. I didn't do as much in Fletcher, but NSU I was a huge fan of this, because I learned my lesson about academic probation, and that's not fun to play with. And trust me, if you want to have your whole college experience be successful, you might want to consider that. So it means you set yourself up for discipline. It's like you kind of set yourself up saying, look, I'm going to class from this time. For me, it's like scheduling the practicing, the class times, break times, and the times. It is like always the moment I get to the campus, the moment I leave. And when I get home, I'm always like, okay, I know I got homework to do. Or sometimes in this manner, I might sometimes have a performance I have to do. And that always varied after school. But I know there were times I had to stay up so late to where it was and when I stayed up a little past, I know I do it every night, and especially on performance night, so I stayed up so late to finish homework, because that was when I couldn't let slip. And usually I'd plan my like the due dates around concerts too, to make sure I didn't miss the due date just because I was doing something else that was related to my major. Because you can't just do the stuff that's related to your major, because sometimes, like if you're in music, you have your music classes and you're going to have your general education classes. I know it's going to be different for every major, around and about, because I want to speak it from my own experience, but every major is going to be a little different. So that's what I said. So that teaches yourself not to or prioritize, not to, um, you know, and make sure you have your priorities darn straight. Okay. And also for number 3, and I had to learn this one myself, make note of changes that can, or sometimes it could occur. Like sometimes you got a teacher that's not teaching the class, or you had some professor changes because either they took an absence, either they left, either scenario, uh, possible case that can happen. Not a few of the professors that did. Either they changed, either they had like a combination of the three, and COVID happened at the same time. So I had to adapt a little bit, more or less. And if you're in the same boat, don't feel bad. It happens. It just go with the flow. If you can, walk through your schedule before the first day. I know I didn't get a chance to walk through it as much because my campus during COVID did not have campus tour, which, oh, yeah, it got a lot of students lost on the first day. But I learned something. If you can't, always get to classes earlier to get some help to get to your destination. I'll tell you one thing, I am not going to lie, because it's about ready to get into my next point. Because I'm going to say this. And I got to my classes earlier, especially in the first year, the very first day, because I've gotten myself lost in Nicholson University a few times, like having to miss, skip over the buildings or do something crazy. Yeah, but I thank goodness my professors were forgiving during the time, you know. They were forgiving, they were understanding people, and most likely in the first week, they're gonna understand, pretty much. But by the time you get to like second or third week, your mind's already thinking of like, okay, how to get there, what shortcuts can I take to get to class a little bit quicker. It does get better, and I'm gonna say it's okay to get lost. Because you're just learning. You're just finding your way. And I got lost a few times on the first week. It took me into probably the second week, maybe third week to know my way around campus. But let me tell you this. Professors always love it when you always attend class on time. And I'll tell you one thing, I've met a few that were stricklers with the attendance. Because I think for some of them, they said that 2 tardies can equal 1 absence. I'm not kidding. No. And I think with a few of the absences add up. Let me tell you. And you may be on the verge of failing your class, and you'd have to be forced to drop for non-attendance. That means you would have to retake the class again. Or in the worst case scenario, your professors can drop you too. Either way. Okay, if you're late or absent, you always email professors. And that means when you can. That shows the professor that you are responsible, that whatever happens, you are in good communication. Because good communication can come a very long way. That way, if you're asking them for a reference, a job reference, and that comes up, they can attest to that. And I know that I've got a bunch of people on my end attesting to me about how I'm always on time, how I've always been responsible, how I always emailed when I knew I was going to be late or absent. That sort of incident. If you miss a test, you emailed the professor within 24 or so hours, I think 24 or 48 hours, whatever their time frame is, to schedule and make up the test. But you got to have the darn, if you had a death in the family, obituary. If you've been to the ER, the doctor, or urgent care, you provide that excuse. Your medical excuse, obituary, whatever your situation is. And you go to that office. If you're taking it in the disability center, you would have to email not just your professor, but you'd also have to tell the disability person, say, hey, I had an incident, something happened. And what they're going to do is, like, as long as you communicate with those parties very thoroughly, they'll let you bottom and take the test somehow. Hopefully. Okay. Number 10. Always use focus mode on the phones because, honey bunny, you don't want your phone going off during class. And focus mode is technically do not disturb. So you know what? You can put your devices on it. If you have an iPad and a phone that you bring to your campus, if you have those settings set on your phone, it can transfer to the iPad just as easily. The reason this thing shows that do not disturb, I'll show a little bit. Focus, do not disturb. And it's going to also show on your screen. Say do not disturb, and you can take it off. But also I do I'll go through my schedule the very first of the semester and set those time frames. That I don't want to be bothered between this time and this time, Monday through Friday. Or have the device go like that when I go to campus. That way I don't have to go with it throughout the day. There you go. If your classroom numbers are in the 200s, chances are they are upstairs. Yes, that's a good part. Because there are some classes that go downstairs, and I've got some examples of buildings that were upstairs and downstairs. But the most common one I'm going to refer to is Talbot, because I know Talbot has, when you walk in, there's a desk, there's your theater, right, front and center, and then you got the entrance to that. And you got classrooms on both sides of that theater. For the mass comm students and the art students take classes on those wings. Then when you kind of go upstairs, that's all your music students and the practice rooms. I got allergies. So the chances are, if you are taking classes that are in 200, you just gotta go upstairs. If you carry heavy books in the bag and your back tires out, you can get yourself a luggage cart. I'll tell you a little story about mine. Mine was I know my professors have seen me with a luggage cart a lot. So I was carrying a lot of weight. I had like a big backpack with my binders, my tablet, some of the books here and there. and my computer on the back. I'm not lying. That's what it was. So, and I also had to bring my purse, my stick bag, stuff like that on campus. So my back always, by the time I get into the classroom, it always gets like my shoulders hurting, and sometimes if you're kind of big up here, this is for the women, if you got a big chest like here, it can really pull down on your shoulder so much. So sometimes you have to alleviate your shoulder almost immediately. So my mom thought of it since my first semester, second semester, something like that, to give me a luggage cart. That luggage cart's been my lifesaver. Especially when I'm constantly carrying weight, going from class to class, you know. I just put my stuff on the cart, strap it on both ends, tight as can be, and roll myself out into the elevator and get myself out of the building. Okay, and it brings me to my next point. The elevators in the academic pupils are for people who uses carts and wheelchair users, and for people who have other issues. Like, I use the elevator most of my academic study because I had to carry a heavy load. But there are some people that also I've seen that they had to use the. And okay, that brings me to another point on this one. And for those of you who have a cart, you can use the ramps to get in and out the buildings. If your building has a ramp, take it to advantage. Because they're not going to say anything if you roll in your cart to your classroom. And I can think of a few buildings, including, like, I can think of Talbot has two. I remember the library had one. Pelletier had one. And then Dr. Miranda's office, the printing building, I know down had a ramp somehow. The ramp was for your use. If you're a wheelchair person, you can use that. I used the button too when I had to bring all that stuff in and to and from my classes. That button was my friend. Right there. Or if I had to get stuff for my lessons and go into the band room, the button was my little friend. There it is. So yeah, that button is for everybody who has to wheel things out, or even themselves. And if they're on walkers or whatever, that sometimes getting the door will be impossible. And that's a good tip. 14. Pay attention to your syllabus because sometimes professors have due dates and exam dates planned well ahead of your schedule. Okay, treat the syllabus like your Bible. Guard that darn thing with your life. I'm saying it honestly. Guard with your life. Get it? And don't get caught with plagiarism. That's another one. Because a lot of your professors, if you have to do a term paper, chances are that term paper is going to go to the Turnitin box. And that goes for everybody. And if you're detected plagiarism, you're going to have to do something about that before it gets turned in. Nobody wants their name turned in to the dean. Because that would be the worst possible sanctions there will be. And possibly including a spelling. Point blank. Dates can change sometimes. Pay attention in class or the emails. And usually professors are very good at this. Because if we're not where we're supposed to be, chances are it could happen. So let that be known. Office hours are good to go and ask for help. Yes, perfect one. Because if you're struggling in a class, you will need every inch of help you can get. Whether it's tutoring, and most campuses provide tutoring services. If going to the professor and you meet with them on their terms and your terms right there. It's okay to ask for help if you're unclear. Don't be shy. It's okay, because they like it just as much as you. There. If you have a disability, follow up with your disability center beforehand to get documentation submitted. And I think I just kind of said that in another video, so go watch that one if you need to know. Make sure you limit the clubs you're in. Grades should always come first. Good point. Because I didn't get into sororities. I'm telling you that now. Yeah, if you want to, you can, but please keep a limit of what you get into, because your grades should always take the first priority first. Because then again, your grades come first, because you got to worry about the thing called financial aid in your scholarships. The scholarships, the GPAs might vary, determining with requirements. But the financial aid is a very consistent thing for undergrad, that you have to stay within a 2.0 GPA. Okay. Another tip. It's okay to have a W, but make sure you maintain all your hours for eligibility. Like, if let's say you don't do well at 17 hours, and let's say you make an F on, I should know. If you have a withdrawal within that 17 hours, withdrawals with W. F hurts you, but withdrawals don't. What they will do if you pass the remainder of your classes, C or better, they'll take that and say, look, you passed the semester at least. If you're not happy with a professor, follow the syllabus and figure out what the chain of command is. And typically, I'm going to say what the chain of command was my experience, and have dealt with it a few times, but not as severe. The chain of command, and think of this as you're going into a job and you don't like what your boss says. First and foremost, let's calculate how you do this. First and foremost, if you're unhappy with the professor, first thing you always do, you go and email this professor asking for an office time. This is the time you can talk about these things. If you don't like the decision of a grade, yes, you go and talk about it during your hour. That means he or she will be happy to show you what you did wrong. Let's take it there. If you still think this professor is horrible, then the next little piece of advice I can give you is go and do your syllabus again. And for me, I knew the music department way pretty from the back of my head. But you find out who that department head is. That's another part. Then you go to email that him or her request a time to meet. That's another thing. If you still think that none of those two work, the third thing you go do is you email that dean, his or her dean of that department. And I can tell you my names. And I'm going to use my favorite teacher for example. If I had a problem with Dr. Miranda, okay, I would go into Dr. Miranda first. And good thing I know how to talk it out between me and him. If I didn't like what he said, I would have taken it up with Dr. Bartnick. Yes, that was the former head of music department. So, I don't know the new head. I know it's Dr. Schwartz, but anyways, I'm going my old way with this. But it would be similar when you go into school. I promise. If I didn't like what they both said, I'd go to Dean Donegan. That was the head of liberal arts. Means dean of. And if I didn't like what the dean or the others said, I'll go to Clune. But you don't go to the president of the college at the very first step, because then he or she would bump you back down to say, did you go to your professors? Did you go to the department head? If you went to the dean. There's a proper way of doing it. So that's what you want to keep in mind. If you want to save gas on your vehicles, you can take a bus to campus. It depends on your campus, but then again, you can take a bus. I did when I was in Fletcher, and I also did mostly in Nickel State. So I hope my little tips can help. And by the way, I seen the video saying that I never personally stayed in the dining hall for stayed in a dorm, but have your family, your mom cook your favorite meal, but because sometimes some people say it really sucks after orientation, but hey, I'm lucky I haven't been that route, but these other tips I think will be fabulous for you to hear, and I hope it works. See ya.